What is the first thing you think of when you hear the word Nightfall? If you think about Dredge, I bet you have your own share of experiences, survivor or killer side, when that darkness caused someone to run straight into a wall, dead zone, or even the edge of the map, and maybe allowed you to easily sneak up on someone. Lights Out is very similar, plunging the entire map in total oblivion for the entire trial, removing survivors' scratch marks and the killer's terror radius, making everyone constantly on guard to know where the other was. Or at least, that's what it was trying to be. Given the choice between an entire event and a killer's power, you'd expect the event to be better, right? Well, I think it's not, and I'll try my best to explain why going against a Dredge feels better than playing in the event queue. Before I start actually talking against Lights Out, allow me to be clear, this is not an argument against its balance. Balance is always something that is very hard to pin down, and it is harder to see the balance of effects rather than raw numbers, especially when those effects are filtered through the lens of every different killer. As much as I would love to talk about balance for this, I simply can't without being woefully inaccurate. Instead, I will be coming from the experience standpoint of how the event feels to play for both sides, regardless of how strong either side is, as even the most balanced mechanics can feel bad to play with, and vice versa. For a person that's never played the game, or never seen it being played, darkness doesn't sound like it would be all that impactful on the game. After all, Dead by Daylight is a horror game, right? However, the players who have played the game for a while know that it really isn't, for better or worse. Over the game's 10-year lifespan, it has rapidly become more like a sort of arcade game, as the players learned the best strategies, how to be on their guard, and as the fear factor of the killers slowly wore off. Scares in the game were mostly regulated to the newbies, who didn't have the experience the others did. Lights Out is an attempt to bring back some of that horror and scariness into the game again, albeit through a limited game mode. The lighting for the maps is drastically reduced, and killers no longer have a terror radius, along with survivors leaving no more scratch marks, leading to the game becoming more reminiscent of hide and seek, with plenty of jump scare potential. With everything being so dark, not to even mention most of the UI vanishing, it's hard to even navigate around the map anymore, and if the killer could be hiding around any corner, how safe are you? When a Dredge enters Nightfall, a few simple effects happen. The Dredge gains undetectable, making it hard to tell when it's coming and where it is, and the map becomes blanketed with darkness to make it harder to see. The Dredge also gains bonuses to their power, but for the sake of comparison in this video, we shall focus on these two. Notice that there's no effect that gives the survivors more information to compensate for being in the dark or for Dredge being undetectable. While Nightfall does only last for a limited duration, and survivors can bring perks that reveal auras, there is nothing that helps either side suddenly have more information. This kind of philosophy is what works, and is what Lights Out seems to be missing. In order to discuss how much or little information there should be, however, we first need to understand the different levels of information that you can have in the game. As an example, we will say that a survivor is trying to figure out where a generator is located. The first and lowest level of information they can use is sound. If the survivor can hear the generator, they know that it is nearby, but they don't know exactly where the generator is. The louder the sound, the easier it is to pinpoint. The second level of information is sight, or having a direct line of vision to what you are trying to find. If the survivor can see the generator, they know exactly where it is. And while they might get a bit lost if they lose track of where they are or where it is, they have a good idea of how to find it again, even without sound. The third and final level of information is auras and the UI. As long as something is not blocking you from seeing them at all, they will always be accurate, and you can always find them regardless of where you are or how lost you became, as auras reveal through walls and obstacles to your vision, and the UI is always global even if you somehow got stuck outside the map. Most of the time, both roles have to rely on sound or vision to be able to track things down, as auras and the UI are given out very sparingly due to how strong they are. This is where Lights Out begins to run into issues, as it seems to be very fond of handing out auras like candy, in a game mode where that exact kind of information is supposed to be scarce. To begin with, we have the ways that Lights Out handles generators. This is one of the most important things that they can change, as it is directly tied to which side can win the game, either through the survivors finishing them, or the killer preventing the survivors from doing so. To be fair, there are parts of this especially, I feel, that Lights Out handles well, such as giving generators progress that they start with, and giving survivors a 20% repair speed bonus. The former ensures that survivors can use the first level of information to find these important objectives, and the latter makes the trial feel more like an event by making the game go faster, which also allows for more games of it to be played while it lasts. However, after that is where it starts to go downhill. To start off, killers are able to remove the progress that generators start with by kicking them, making it harder for survivors to find them. In exchange, survivors can use charges of lanterns, which they spawn with, and have a chance to be found in chests around the map, to reveal a nearby generator's aura. And given how many charges lanterns have, this can practically be done forever as long as you have a lantern. But if the survivors can see the auras of generators, the killers need to be able to as well, so killers can see the aura of every generator on the map, just as they are able to in normal matches. The idea started off great, and then it just undermined itself. To start fixing it, I would keep the idea that generators start with a certain amount of progress, but also make that progress permanent, so that the killer can't remove that information through sound, as well as removing the ability to see the auras of generators for both sides. This way, both sides have to actually listen to find where the generators are, instead of just being able to ignore, well, the entire point of the game mode? Looping has become an essential part of the game, and a judge for a player's skill. The longer that you can loop a killer, the more time that you can buy for your teammates, and therefore the more likely the team is to escape. However, simply running away from the killer in a straight line won't work, as the killers are faster than survivors for the most part, and those that aren't have their ways to catch up. For that reason, you need to know where windows and pallets are, in order to get more distance that you can use to your advantage. In the standard game, you can often see where these are, and can even run perks or items that will show them to you. In Lights Out, however, it's a lot harder to see, and you can't bring perks or items into the trial, so finding those resources should be significantly harder, right? But what Lights Out does is that whenever a survivor is holding a lantern, they see the auras of every nearby pallet and window, giving them a base kit form of windows of opportunity. This effect doesn't even consume the charges of the lantern, and applies whenever you are holding one. This effect in particular is what I feel makes the game mode feel more like Lights On than Lights Out, especially given that you spawn into the map with a lantern in hand to immediately make you question why you are playing this event again. Instead of allowing the auras to be seen through walls, I would suggest that looping locations have dim lighting applied to them, as to still make them easier to see, but simultaneously create a sort of danger zone for killers and survivors. If you go through them, you're going to be more visible than before, which makes navigating the map not only a question of where everything is, but also a decision of if you are really sure you want to take that route or not. One of Dead by Daylight's classic mechanics, the exit gates. You have to take the time to open them with a designated switch, but doing so makes you easy to see and vulnerable to getting attacked. Once you finally manage to open them, you are able to escape, and therefore win the match. As survivors can sometimes have trouble locating the exit gates, as only 2 spawn in a trial and on the edges of the map, they get a notification as to where both of the gates are after the generators are completed. Killers receive this notification and the auras of the gates, so that they don't get lost trying to get survivors off of them. In Lights Out, however, survivors also get the killer treatment, being able to see the auras of exit gates for the entire endgame. While this is likely meant to make it easier to find the gates, as compensation for the map being so dark, as I have said before, auras are a bad way to go about it. My idea to fix it is also rather similar to my previous fixes, as I believe just making the areas around the exit gates significantly brighter would fix this problem while still keeping the feel of the mode. There would have to be much more lighting around them than the loops would have, as to make them easier to see, and this would serve a dual purpose of making it easier for the killer to defend the gates, particularly in situations where there is only one survivor left. To list all of the changes I would make in one final section, I would remove the ability to see generator, pallet/window, and exit gate auras, in exchange for making the generators have permanent progress that causes sound, and making loops and the gates brighter. If this one sentence of changes was implemented, I feel like the game mode would feel a lot better overall, both for Killer and Survivor. Dredge's Nightfall already had the right idea, and if we can steer Lights Out towards that ideal, I could feel okay with playing the game mode again. Until then, I'll stick with using it for footage only. This has been Void of Death, the Lich Unbound, and I look forward to seeing you at Unlife Court.